It is a historic milestone for the University of Georgia because the School of Medicine is welcoming its inaugural class of future physicians. And joining me now to talk about all of this is Dr. Erica Brownfield. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on a Friday afternoon. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me.
So, when we think about our medical community, the areas that people can go to get this education, I mean, how many schools do we even have in Atlanta right now, or sort of in Georgia?
Well, in Georgia, there are 5 allopathic medical schools, and there is one osteopathic medical school, and that's PCOM.
Okay. And I think a lot of people have heard of Augusta as, one of the primary medical schools. I know we've got Emory in the private sector. So, how do you see the University of Georgia really being able to add to this equation and offer a growing opportunity for students here in our state?
Well, I'm going to back up just a second if I can to get to your earlier question. So, around the country, ironically, UGA is the 159th medical school in the country. And it's ironic that we have 159 counties here in Georgia. And so, how UGA is going to contribute to this is we have a huge shortage of physicians in the state of Georgia. We are now offering the second public medical school in the state, in addition to Augusta University Medical College of Georgia. So we will be able to hopefully start to narrow that gap between the physicians and the patients that need us throughout the state. And our goal really is to serve over time all those 159 counties.
How do you feel that this medical school, this medical program at UGA is going to be different than what we're seeing at these other schools?
I think what's going to be different is, and we've actually already started our education. So our students this week started out their orientation. And instead of an orientation in the classroom, they actually started with a road trip of Georgia. And so our kind of philosophy is in order to care for Georgia, you have to first learn and love Georgia. And you can't really do that well in a classroom just with your classmates. You really need to get out there and start hearing the stories of people, hearing from communities, really starting to understand the lay of the land and the challenges, the healthcare challenges in Georgia. And so hopefully by starting off with building those relationships from the very beginning and doing a longitudinal community service project with communities around the state over the 4 years with a capstone project, we not only want to educate our future physicians about medicine, but we really want them to look at the human and the community side and the service and outreach of what medicine really is. And it all starts with relationships from the very beginning.
We saw a photo of the inaugural class there for just a few moments. What was the response from students to creating this program? Did you get as many applications as you thought you would? Was it overwhelming? What was just the reaction?
So the reaction was fantastic. We were a little bit behind in our accreditation in terms of when we could even open the application process. So because of where it landed, we only had 2 weeks to open up our applications and then close them. And in that 2 week period, we had over 2,000 applications and had to quickly go through those 2,000 applications, do a holistic review, and interviewed about 10% of those to get to our final 64 students that came on Monday to our inaugural class. We've already opened up applications for 27, so we'll have the full admissions year to take applications, and we have already gotten a tremendous response from the people who are interested in UGA School of Medicine.
And will you be looking again for 64 students, or are you planning to expand the number of students in the program at that point?
So our big, plan is over 8 years to double the class size. So, but incremental each year because we don't want to, grow too quickly, and we want to be mindful of that intentional growth over an 8 year period, but to double the class size.
So, knowing you're getting so many applications and can only take a handful of them, what are the things that you're really looking for? Who are the students that you believe this is the program we want you in it?
I think we are looking for people who have a real tie to Georgia, whether they are coming from out of state or in state. They have to have a tie to the state of Georgia. They really want to make an impact in Georgia. And that really is wherever that is. We are focused on not only rural medicine, primary care medicine, we are also interested in training our subspecialists, our super subspecialists, whether it's urban, rural, primary care, wherever, but we want them to be interested in one day coming back and serving the state of Georgia because that's super important to our land grant mission of the university.
I know that I've done stories myself reflecting on some of the data around the shortage of medical professionals in our rural counties and communities, or even just certain areas of focus that we have shortages within various parts of the state. How important is it to really fulfill that mission, to know that these are going to be students who want to remain Georgia centric?
It is a very important part of our mission. And just like you said, there are parts of the state where there are no physicians at all. Now, a lot of that has to do with the population. So, oftentimes, what you'll see is a rural hospital that is serving multiple counties in that area. But we know access to care is extremely important and really the first step into getting care that patients need. So, part of our road trip was taking students to some of these locations where there are not necessarily services for everything for everyone, but they serve as a hub to kind of start, at least filling a need that is desperately needed in rural Georgia. But to get them that first look in terms of, what they can do in a smaller community that's so important to providing these services that are sometimes life and death for individuals.
I imagine a lot of these students only know what they know. They know the communities kind of that they grew up in. So, what was the response when they took this tour into some of these more rural parts of the state?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, most people who applied to medical school were from kind of that metro Atlanta area, the 27 counties that encompass that. So we did some reflection on the bus trip back, and the stories that were told by the students really was kind of eye-opening because maybe they had an experience in a hospital, but maybe not quite like the hospitals in Thomaston or Upson or Washington County. So for them to see this, it really kind of, they may have had a picture in their mind what rural medicine meant to them, but now they could see firsthand, some of these rural hospitals have a Da Vinci robotic, device to use in surgery. So it may have maybe decrease some of the myths of what students felt like before they were actually able to see it. And I think it did at least give them an appreciation of what medicine is all about. And it is about the community, it is about relationships, it is about that trust with physicians and patients. And no matter where you go, rural community, urban community, you don't want to lose sight of that. And I think it really opened their minds to something maybe they weren't ever considering before.
What would you say to a young dreamer, someone who has always wanted to be a physician? They're in high school, maybe even still in middle school, and they're thinking maybe now because there are more opportunities to get this education, maybe this is something I can do. What would you say to that dreamer who has this as a goal in mind?
I would say never give up on your dreams. You have to work hard. You only not have to have the intelligence and the book sense, but really it is about those people skills and about what you do to be human, because being human is what makes you a great doctor in the long run. So I would tell them, find physicians that you admire, learn from them, see what they did. You're going to get lots of different information and pieces of advice. Try not to go down the rabbit hole and the trap of the student doctor networks and the Reddits and the advice that's given there, because oftentimes that's not necessarily the best advice. And keep going with your dream, keep looking for opportunities, and know that even if you don't get into medical school, eventually you can still serve patients and human communities with all these other professions that help physicians in the healthcare workforce. So there's multiple ways to take care of people.
AAA spokesperson Montre Waiters. Montre, always great to have you on this morning. So a lot of kids are already back in class this morning. What is the single biggest change that drivers need to make as those students are now back in school?
Hi, for having me. I would tell you the biggest concern is that children can be unpredictable, as you stated. They may dart into the streets, cross between parked cars, or be distracted while walking. So when you're driving near a school, expect the unexpected. Children may not always see traffic, so drivers need to be prepared to react.
Yeah, you got to be ready. You know, a lot of students are walking to the bus stop. They may just be walking to school from their homes. So from the moment a child leaves their home until they come back at the end of the day, what are some of the dangers that they face along the way and along those routes?
Absolutely. So one thing is, again, drivers not paying attention, right, to the students that are walking. And what we found is where it is most dangerous is when students are getting on the bus or getting off the bus. So it is very important that when you see that school bus arm come out to tell you to stop, that drivers stop. Because again, when we talk about kids being uncomfortable, they could dart out in front of the road. So it's very important that drivers are not driving distracted. They're slowed down, and when they see that arm out, that they stop and wait till kids get to their to the crosswalk safely.
Yeah, we have seen the dangers of when that does not happen. You know, AAA has had this long-standing campaign. In fact, it dates back to 1946. What has changed, though, and what has stayed the same with the campaign that you all continue to push every year?
So that's a great question. I will tell you, basically, it's the same over 80 years. You know, that's why it's very important for drivers to slow down, pay attention to your speed. Do not drive distracted, especially during those hours when kids are getting on the bus or when they're coming home in the afternoon. It's all about the driver staying focused. The message is the same. Slow down, don't drive distracted, and watch out for our kids.
You know, we talked about some of the highest number of crashes and incidents happen in the afternoon when school is letting out. That means a lot of times around those school zones, people have to be really careful when they're heading home or even heading to pick up their children. What are some of the most common mistakes you see drivers making passing through those school zones?
Speed. You know, we can't talk enough about speed. Speeding through the school zone, or assuming that the bus is getting has cleared all the students out and is safe to go, even though they see the stop sign still out. So again, speed and distraction are the most common things that we see when it comes to children being impacted by drivers speeding and being distracted, not paying attention.
In Monterey, we're also seeing a lot more e-bikes and e-scooters out there. I see them every day, you know, driving around Atlanta. And that's also become a part of your campaign and your initiative as well.
Right. So e-bikes and e-scooters have added a new safety challenge. So parents should make sure children wear their helmets, understand the rules of the road, and use appropriate devices. You know, drivers should be on the lookout for e-bikes and e-scooter riders, especially in neighborhoods and near the schools. So bottom line is e-bikes and e-scooters aren't toys. They can reach significant speed, so it's important for parents, riders, and drivers to share the road safely.
Okay, Monterey, before you go, anything else that parents should know? I know a lot of parents, you know, they go to that pickup line. It can be crowded during the drop-off or the pickup. Anything they should know as they are getting there today and, you know, getting going with this new school year?
Hey, pack your patience. It's the first day of school. You know, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, not just with parents driving, but with the students. So again, pay attention, slow down, put those phones away, and stay alert around school zones and crosswalks.
I guess the first question to throw out there is, when we think of healing, you know, I kind of put that in little air quotes, healing, what does healing really mean and look like after a tragedy like a school shooting?
Well, thank you for having me. And healing can take many different forms after such a tragedy occurs. And there's not a one size fits all approach. I think a lot of what is going on right now is people, part of the healing process is trying to make meaning out of what happened. Look for answers, find information, look for ways to prevent such a tragedy from happening again, making sure that the mental health and emotional well-being of the community and the individual students continues to be a primary factor and is at a top priority right now.
When your kid walks in the door, do you say something or do you really let them lead the conversation?
I truly believe in full transparency, of course, in the most developmentally appropriate format and language. I think allowing the child to lead with information and questions and giving them honest answers is really creating that space where they feel safe and they feel that they can go to a trusted person, particularly if it's a caregiver or somebody at school, to be able to share any information. I don't think it's a negative either if parents introduce the topic to them, albeit in a gentle way and albeit in a very thoughtful way, to particularly for kids who are at this age level that are very aware and can understand the tragedy that occurred, the impact that it has. And sometimes it can be something as simple as a check-in of like, how are you feeling about this? Do you feel like you have a support there? Do you feel like you know who to go to? Like on a larger level for the tragedy that occurred, about those questions, but also moving forward of like, do you feel like you have somebody you can go to, or if you have a friend in need who you can reach out to if they need that level of support, especially if they're struggling emotionally.
I know after the Appalachia High School shooting, I spoke with my own teenage son, and his reaction was almost, well, that's something that happens somewhere else. That wouldn't happen at my school. We don't have students who would do something like that. As a parent, what do you do with that information? Because a part of me wants to be grateful that my child feels safe in his environment, and you don't want to burst that bubble. But at the same time, we know that this type of violence can happen anywhere.
It is. I think unfortunately, there is a level of numbness and a sense of invisibility that children feel now. And it is a very sad state that students are living in at this point in time, that they hear about countless numbers of tragedies, school shootings, and also feeling as if it won't happen to them. They feel so far removed from it. And I think that it's really important to talk about that they do live in a safe community, hopefully, and they have all the safety measures in place, and really just checking in with them to feel like, have you talked about what that looks like for your school? All the schools at this point in time are practicing lockdown drills, have all those different protocols in place so that in the event of something happening that is putting those students at risk, there is a procedure to follow. However, it isn't uncommon, unfortunately, at this point where a lot of teens, especially at this point, feel like it just can't happen to me. And we don't want to impose that level of fear in them, but we also want to balance that with some level of reality here. And so part of that is a reality check of, do you feel safe? Do you feel like you know what to do in those situations? If you see something, do you know to say something? The standard phrase that we typically hear: don't keep it inside. If a friend is saying something to you, you see something posted online, you feel like there's somebody that's in need of help or in danger, don't stay quiet.
Leading into this discussion, we heard that sound from District Attorney Brad Smith, and one of his thoughts was really, it seems, to parents to understand what your children are engaging in. What is that poster that's on the wall? What is that shooting, perhaps, that they are Google searching and trying to learn more about, and why? What's the motivation behind that? How do you kind of get that sense over to parents to be active in paying attention to what their children are learning and filling their heads with?
I think it's really important for parents to have a pulse on what their children are involved with. So I think because social media has such a high level of prevalence now, to be really cautious of what's being posted on social media platforms, who the children are friends with, who they are following. Are they sharing personal information? Are they sharing detailed information about themselves? Do they have other accounts? That's not uncommon. They have a main account and they have some additional accounts that sometimes parents aren't aware of. Are there other signals or signs that the child is exhibiting that parents should have their eyes and ears open, whether that be a poster on the wall or seems to be a fixation with certain types of profiles, or let's say media, or they're watching certain kinds of shows or movies. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're in danger, but we really at this point in time have to pay attention to all the signs, in addition to, are there behavioral changes as well? Are they pulling back? Are they more withdrawn? Are they increasingly irritable? Are they showing some other signs related to their overall emotional well-being that's in conjunction with some of these other fixations or focus that could be a real signal for a call for help?
I know sometimes parents talk with their teens, even if they do need to have that conversation. What you get in exchange is, sort of an eye roll. And some teens really do seem to be able to go with take all of this in stride and with a healthy perspective. Then there are the parents who drop their kids off, and it's the parents who have that just feeling of anxiety every time they have to drop their kids off at school. How do parents deal with their own anxiety without passing that on to their children?
I think it's a real fear nowadays. I think for parents is to really wonder at this point in time, like, is my child safe when I drop them off at school and they walk through those doors? Are they going to be safe throughout that day? And it is a horrible feeling to have for parents of that unknown. And at the same time, trusting that there are all the measures in place, hopefully for the school and within the community, to keep those children safe. Unfortunately, there's no guarantees, and we don't have control over all the various factors that can go into these situations. However, I think it's really important for parents also to band together so that they, as a community, can ensure that their schools are taking all the safety measures possible, that if they have feedback to share with the schools, that they're able to do so, that they're part of a parent organization, whether it's the PTA association that can bring information back. I think it's really important. Parents don't have to operate in isolation. This is a common source of anxiety for so many parents nowadays. I think there's a part of it that we do have to normalize, that it is okay to be very scared. And we also have to trust that there's measures in place. And if there seems to be any gaps in safety measures that parents are noticing, I think it's really important to bring those up to the school, to the administration, and also talk alongside with other parents, because I think that's how true action happens.
In closing, what do you hope is the real message that the Barrow County community takes away as they launch into a new school year and just kind of deal with all that has happened in the past 2 years?
I think that's an excellent question. I think because of what they've gone through and the impact that it has on a community with all that's gone on, and the multi layers that go into this whole entire situation, I hope that they can find a renewed sense of hope for the upcoming school year. It's not about forgetting. It's not about the fact that this can have a continuous impact on the community, but hopefully to know moving forward that they are a strong community, and hopefully this is another indication that if there are any signs or signals that are indicating that a child is in distress, a child is showing any type of behavior at school, or people hear about it in the community, that they will do something about it, that they will say something, they will involve the appropriate authority figures, school administration, that it's not a wait and see approach. It's really about let's be proactive, and let's make sure that we're doing everything we can for the student's safety, and just so that we can continue to move forward while also ensuring that we can protect these children from any future harm.
And the pressure is already building between earlier mornings, packed calendars, rising costs, and the pressure to get everything right. A lot of parents are starting the year already running on empty, and new research shows just how heavy that load has become. The U.S. Surgeon General reports nearly half of parents feel overwhelmed most days. Last year, the Kids Mental Health Foundation reported that once school starts, close to 2 out of 3 parents report more stress. They say schedules and routines become the biggest strain, and parents are paying for it with their own time here. Now, this information in this study out this year showed that 40% of millennial parents are giving up sleep, while close to half are sacrificing personal time or hobbies. Trisha Pease, Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Serenity Mental Health Centers, joining us this morning with some ways to keep that stress from becoming burnout. So Trisha, we spent a lot of time talking about kids back to school, their own nerves. Why can this transition also be pretty hard for parents as well?
Yeah, when you think about what parents are doing, they're juggling a lot of things, getting their kids back to school and trying to help the kids have success. You think about the schedules, the transportation, extracurricular activities, everyone trying to eat healthy, make sure their kids have enough clothes, supplies, and all of the sports things that can all add a financial burden as well. And so it's easy to let all of those things add up, and parents can forget to prioritize their own mental well-being.
And Trisha, I gotta admit, I had the first day of school jitters myself the night before. I didn't sleep well. I wanted to make sure I got everything right for her first day of kindergarten, didn't forget anything. I had to order the back to school cute little sign at 8:30 the night before because I forgot it. Is this gonna kind of subside? What's the difference between the normal first week chaos and that stress becoming something more serious to pay attention to?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we all understand that as parents, your brain is thinking of 15 different things at any given time, trying to make sure you're planning ahead, not forgetting your back to school sign, all those little things that matter for our kids to feel loved and supported. And so just getting into a really good routine, and it doesn't have to be complicated, simple is great. But just being able to build that routine, and that's where transitions are hard for all of us. That's normal. And so just keeping in mind as you're going through that transition, have something you're working towards, like a schedule that makes sense for everyone. And then if you find yourself just getting to a place where that constant worry and stress and difficulty sleeping or things like that become chronic, that's the word we like to use. If it's just not going away, then pay attention to that, because we don't want you feeling anxious all the time. We don't need that burden as parents. We need to be able to still enjoy the time we have with our kids.
And you kind of touched on it here. Why are parents so quick to dismiss their own warning signs, some of the ones that you just listed there? And how can we address them without making our kids feel like they're to blame?
Yeah, it's a great question, because we know that kids are super intuitive and they recognize what we're going through. And so if they feel like they're the cause of our stress, they're going to internalize that and they're going to stress. And then we get into this cycle of we're worrying about worrying. And it's okay to have stress. What's really important is that we show our kids how to manage stress, and we teach them coping skills. We show them that we can take change in stride and that it's going to be okay. And I think a lot of that's just setting realistic expectations in this world of social media and all the pressure to look perfect. I think we can, as parents, set expectations that are not always realistic. And so just taking a step back sometimes and saying what really does matter. It's relationships with our kids. It's feeling good about getting up tomorrow. And so what will really help us is keeping in mind the things that matter and setting our goals in a realistic way so we don't always feel overwhelmed.
All right, what can the schools do to make the transition easier? We got about 30 seconds left, because the 5 apps that's not the way.
No, I believe that simple things. Know what's coming, plan ahead with your kids, and communicate, and you're going to be great.